Monday afternoon. Rain was pooling on the windowsill of Jasmine Crockett's office, and everything seemed to be proceeding as usual until her assistant brought in a strange envelope. No stamp, no return address, just a piece of old-school paper, folded into quarters, written in thin ballpoint pen, unadorned, with no spelling errors. "We can't live here anymore. One of my siblings died last winter, and no one knew. If there are good adults out there, please come to Bauer Building C, 302F. Please. We don't want to lose anyone else. Tamika." Jasmine read it slowly, then read it again. The paper trembled slightly in her hand, not from the cold, but from what was gently tapping in her head. Don't want to lose anyone else. No child should know how to write a sentence like that. She had received her share of anonymous letters in her career, lawsuits, police accusations, hopeless petitions, but never one like this, written by a child with such despair. Jasmine leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a few seconds. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was an old letter misplaced. But maybe someone really needed her. She reopened the file for the Bauer complex, a dilapidated workers' housing complex, long off the budget support list. Apartment number 302F was in Block C, marked normal. No complaints. No complaints. She placed the paper on the desk, picked up her phone, and typed a few lines into the office's internal group. "I might do an unannounced inspection tomorrow afternoon. No media needed. Wait for my signal." Then she stood up, took the envelope, and put it in her coat pocket. As she stepped out the door, Jasmine paused for a second. Half a cup of cold tea remained on the desk. On the sticky note next to the printer, someone had written a reminder. Hearing, immigrant child law, 10 a.m. Wednesday. But if a child of color had to ask for help themselves, no one was testifying for them right now. And so she went. No media, no official schedule, just a small piece of paper and a very real intuition. Somewhere out there was a house without adults. The Bauer building stood silently in a cluster of residences, almost forgotten by the city. Cracked windows, rusted railings, mailboxes pried open, and on the ground floor a few children played basketball with cardboard boxes, their eyes not meeting strangers. Jasmine didn't bring bodyguards or media. She wore plain clothes, dark glasses, and walked from behind the small market 2 blocks away. Since receiving the anonymous letter that was a plea for help, with words too sharp for childhood, she had decided to verify it directly, without waiting for the process. On the hallway wall, between peeling paint and water stains, was a piece of paper neatly taped with double-sided tape. It wasn't a notice from the management, but a kind of schedule, simple, handwritten but seemingly updated regularly. Each line was a name: Zora, Elijah, Tamika. And next to it were very specific tasks: cleaning, cooking, portioning, writing in a notebook. Her eyes stopped exactly where they needed to stop. Tamika. The name matched the last line of the plea for help from the day before. No signature, but the handwriting was the same, neat, with a habit of capitalizing letters in the middle of a line. And if Tamika was in charge of the food pantry, she would definitely stop by the storage room near the ground floor stairs where Jasmine had just passed. She walked back down, this time less conspicuously. Right around the corner of the hallway, there was an old refrigerator placed outside, next to a wooden shelf with a few boxes of instant noodles and milk cartons. A small world operating on division and survival. Jasmine looked around. There was no one. She pulled out a coin with an 8-pointed star from her pocket, the kind she used to give to voters during her Promise Keeper campaign. The coin was engraved with the words, "I see you." She slipped the coin into the slot of the instant noodle box lid, right under the oatmeal box. Only someone careful would see it. No one but Tamika would check there. And if the child understood, she would know. That woman had come, had read, and would not overturn their world. Jasmine stood up, leaving no further trace. Only when leaving the hallway did she pause for a few seconds, whispering into the voice recorder, 302F has an internal coordination structure. No direct intervention. Tamika shows signs of distress, but not ready to be exposed. Act according to the logic of trust. Do not break. Wait for a response signal. And she left, as if she had never been there. The morning in apartment 302F had no alarm clock, no adults calling out to wake up. Only the gentle sound of water running in the kitchen and the soft tapping of a spoon against the side of a pot, regular as a ritual. Zora, 15 years old, woke up first as usual. She pulled back the thin blanket, gently stepped over her sleeping siblings, avoiding making the wooden floor creak. Her long curly hair was neatly tied back. She wore a faded gray hoodie with a smiley face on it, the sleeves stained with ink. The kitchen light was on. Zora washed the pot, then pulled a bag of oatmeal out of the bin, checking the expiration date. Not because she loved cooking, but because without breakfast, the whole day would be off track. Nia, 10 years old, appeared next. Her eyes were still sleepy, but her hands were already wiping the dining table. No one told Nia to do that, but after her mother passed away, she wiped the table every morning, just like her mother used to, and no one stopped her. Kenny, 11 years old, climbed in through the window using the drain pipe. He spent the morning collecting empty cans and plastic containers. His ill-fitting sneakers were the only thing keeping his feet from slipping off the damp roof tiles. Kenny didn't like being indoors for too long. He was afraid he would remember too many things, like his father calling him home for dinner or the smell of his mother's hair. Josie, 9 years old, after folding her blanket, carefully arranged her slippers by the door, the correct number of pairs, in the correct positions. If anyone left their slippers out of place, she would gently rearrange them without saying anything. Josie spoke very little, not because she was shy, but because she had once said, "I want to go with Mom," in her sleep, then woke up and no one answered. That morning, while everyone was eating thin porridge, Elijah, 13 years old, wearing glasses, sat neatly with his old notebook, muttering calculations. 3 packs of instant noodles left for another week. No need to use them yet. Zora has to go to swipe the EBT card because she remembers the safe number. And I keep the list of places with discounts on Wednesdays. Elijah didn't go out much. He liked calculating, drawing diagrams of their home like a strategist, and was the one who discovered the circuit breaker needed replacing after a rainstorm by listening to the tiny crackling sound from the outlet. Tamika, 12 years old, was in charge of the food pantry, a not-so-light task, but she never complained. This afternoon, while everyone was out taking care of things, Tamika took the opportunity to go down to the pantry, an old refrigerator placed right next to the back door. Next to it, a wooden box containing instant noodles, oatmeal, a few bags of pastries from the charity market. She squatted down, pulling each pack of instant noodles out of the box, counting according to the distribution list Elijah had drawn. 3 beef flavor packs, 2 chicken packs, 1 spicy pack. Expiring next week. No problem. But when she reached the 3rd pack of oatmeal, her hand stopped. A small metal object fell out, sliding gently onto the tiled floor. Tamika picked it up. A coin, dark bronze color. In the center was engraved an 8-pointed star, and the small inscription, "I see you." At first she was startled. Then she realized that symbol. It was the same type of coin that she had once seen on television in the public library. The woman named Jasmine Crockett had given to her constituents. It was the badge of the Democratic Party. It was the person who had been referred to as the sister of the vulnerable. Tamika's heart pounded, not out of fear, but because someone had read her letter, had come, had understood, without breaking anything. She held the coin in her hand as if holding a promise, and that very evening after dinner, while the group was playing word association, Tamika secretly took a white piece of paper, already folded into quarters, from under her pillow. She quickly wrote in blue pen, "I am Tamika, the one who wrote the first letter. You have come, haven't you? I hope you will help us. If allowed, I would like to have a chance to meet you. Just for a few minutes. Tomorrow evening, at 7 o'clock. Corner of the first floor stairs. I will wait for you." It was still her signature, but without an address. But it was enough for the recipient to know. Tamika folded the paper, carefully sealed it with tape, then stuffed it into an empty mint candy box. A small metal box, which used to be Rico's toy. The next morning, when taking out the trash as assigned, Tamika crossed the small alley behind, walked 3 blocks to the back of the Braden Civic Center. Yesterday, Tamika had accidentally seen a news report about a resident and learned that Mrs. Crockett had come to Chicago for work, and that was the building where her office was located. Tamika didn't know how to send the letter, partly because she was afraid of seeing so many serious-looking adults sitting inside, and partly because she was afraid of hiding from Zona for the second time. As she stood hesitant and looked worried, a black woman in business attire saw Tamika, approached her, and asked. Tamika was startled and instinctively stepped back. The woman saw the letter peeking out from behind Tamika and understood the situation. "Do you want to send a letter to Mrs. Crockett? You can put it in the mailbox over there," she said. Tamika's eyes darted towards the mailbox. She looked for a few seconds and said, "I want to give it to her in person. She knows me, she'll understand." The woman was a little surprised, but looking into those bright yet sad eyes, a strange sense of empathy seemed to fill her. She gently said, "I'll help you, but Mrs. Crockett isn't in the office right now, so I'll take you up to the office to send the letter." Then the woman led Tamika up to the third floor, a place that was incredibly quiet and separate from the noise outside. In front of the door, the woman said she would hold the letter for her and put it on Mrs. Crockett's desk. The little girl obediently followed. While waiting, Tamika looked around the room and focused on the photos. In one picture, Mrs. Crockett was kneeling and hugging three black children. Their faces were very happy, and in each small hand was a bag with lots of food. Mrs. Crockett's smile was brighter than ever. Tamika thought something to herself and smiled unconsciously. Tamika didn't know if her trust was in the right place. After all, the pain of losing loved ones at the hands of those who claimed to be just had been deeply etched into the little girl's heart. But when she saw those pictures with her own eyes, Tamika gained more courage to believe that what she was doing was right. That morning, Crockett went to find the truth of the matter. She returned to the Bauer apartment building. This time she observed more carefully. Indeed, this was not a safe place for children to live. If it continued for much longer, they might not be able to develop properly. She picked up the phone and made a call to Child Services, requesting to check the guardianship records. "I need the guardianship records for apartment 302F, she said directly to the specialist on duty. In less than 10 minutes, the data sheet appeared. Guardian, Mrs. N. Whitaker. Status, eligible for guardianship. Update, 4 successful verification calls in the past 90 days. Status, stable, no complaints." Jasmine leaned her hand lightly on the edge of the desk and asked, "I need the recordings of those calls. All of them." The employee hesitated but finally agreed. 3 hours later in the quiet office, Crockett opened the first audio file. A woman's voice sounded gently. "Yes, the children are fine, doing well in school, no need for assistance. Thank you." Second file. "We're having dinner. Everything is under control. It's okay." Third file. "That's right. I'm home. The kids are at school." She rewound a section, listened carefully again. The feeling of the voice was really strange. There was something unnatural about it. Mrs. Crockett closed her eyes for a few seconds. She opened just one more file. Eviction and displacement data for the past 3 years in Block C, Bauer area. 7 households, all with different violations. But there were no pictures of each family. The information was vague. From not having legal residency papers, then owing rent because they had to pay for medical treatment after a stroke, then being accused of using fake documents to apply for medical assistance for their son with asthma, to being desperate due to being fired. Now Crockett understood. Those poor children, out of fear, with nowhere else to turn, had saved themselves together. They had used artificial intelligence to fake adult voices to answer the survey calls, and had built a sanctuary together for children with broken spirits, a safe zone, isolated from society and those they considered in the name of justice. When she learned the whole truth, Crockett was shocked by such a painful reality. Their survival instinct and longing for a home had caused them to isolate themselves, but fortunately, she had the opportunity to make amends. That evening, when she returned to her office, she saw the letter with that handwriting. She read it, and sitting alone in the dim yellow light of her office, Crockett wrote a line in her notebook. "Children with broken souls do not mean they don't deserve to live a beautiful life. Keep going, my dears." At the apartment building, around dusk, The kids installed small solar-powered light bulbs taped around the ceiling. Wherever one burned out, they put up a sign that said permanent night light and only changed the batteries when absolutely necessary. Apartment 302F was still the same, tidy in a way that wasn't adult neatness, but rather the tidiness of children trying to act like they were used to living that way. On the dining table was a simple dinner, bread with added eggs and 2 bottles of milk. Today, Zona was paid for cleaning the lawn for a well-off family and vegetables from the community garden, divided into 6 equal portions. Zora sat at the end of the table, letting Nia divide the portions. Kenny had just returned from a trip collecting cans, still smelling of gasoline. Josie checked each spoon, tapping it lightly against the side of the bowl before handing it out. Tamika didn't say much. She washed her hands while glancing at the shelf on the wall, where the 7th pillow was still neatly arranged. They all ate happily, because tonight's dinner was more filling than the past 3 days. After dinner, as usual, Zora softly called out, "Whoever wins the word chain game tonight gets to choose tomorrow morning's lesson." Elijah won. He chose to study computer science for tomorrow. Josie smiled. Tamika was silent for a second. When they all dispersed, the lights gradually turned off in each area. The apartment was enveloped in soft darkness. Only the faint light from a flashlight placed upside down in a glass jar cast a dim glow on the wall. Tamika sat by the window, the cold moonlight casting onto her face. Clearly showing on her brown skin were her dark, bright eyes reflecting hope. She hugged her pillow, breathing silently. Zora appeared, draped a thin scarf over the child's shoulders, then sat down beside her. They didn't say anything for a while. Tamika spoke first, her voice as small as a falling dust particle. "Sister Zora, have you ever thought that we can't keep living like this forever?" Zora sighed softly. "Living is enough, not forever. Just get through tonight." Tamika, "I know you've kept us safe. Every day, every night. You find food, you teach us, you fold every blanket, cover every broken dream. But sister, are you tired? We are just children, forced to grow up to survive. You can't replace a mother. You don't deserve to be a mother when you could be going to school and playing with friends. You're smart, but you can't be a doctor. You can't give Elijah medicine yourself if he has an asthma attack. You don't even have enough money to buy EBT cards anymore. You don't even get 3 nights of sleep a week without waking up in the middle because you dreamed of one of us being taken away." Zora turned away, her lips pressed together. Tamika continued, her voice trembling, but each word clear. "Tamika, I used to think the system would never understand us. I used to believe those adults in ties only knew how to sign papers and then abandon us. Until I saw Mrs. Crockett," Tamika said while showing Zona the wonderful things and statements Mrs. Crockett had made. "I don't know if she can save me, but I know she is the only one who can protect me. I secretly sent her a letter without you knowing." Tamika confessed Zona was startled and looked at Tamika, her voice suddenly becoming angry. "Why did you do that? They will take us away. They will separate us. They will kick us out like they did with our parents. You are so stupid." Tamika seemed to have anticipated these words and said firmly, "She came here alone, and she witnessed what happened in here. She will save us. Please believe me. I saw the pictures in her office. She was standing next to children like us. And I have never seen a brighter smile than that." Zora turned around. Her eyes were red, but she kept her voice firm. "Zora, I don't understand. Every time we trust an adult, we lose someone. You once called the neighbor for help when your mother fainted, but in the end, they called the police and you lost your mother forever. Do you know that feeling? The feeling of trusting someone and then being betrayed? It's cold like a knife. It's empty. It's not like the hunger I've endured. It's like someone took my heart and put it in a bottomless pit." Tamika paused for a beat, then said very slowly, "I don't want us to lose anyone else, but if we keep living like this, we will also starve to death, not because we were robbed, but because we don't have the ability to handle everything. I don't dare to see you cough anymore, Zora. I don't dare to hear Kenny say, 'I'm fine,' while his leg is bleeding from climbing the fence. I can't hear Josie read poetry to Rico's pillow every night, without knowing that the response is silence. This is not living. This is just existing. I don't want to be a walking shadow. I want you." To be able to sleep without having to watch over anyone. I want us to be able to go to school, go to the dentist, be recognized by society. You may not trust anyone, I understand, but I need you to trust me this time. Just once. Please give us a chance. I believe her. I believe she will save us. Zora said nothing. A tear fell. No one knew whose eyes it was from. Then very slowly, Zora turned back to look at Tamika. Zora, if you're wrong, Tamika, then I won't be here anymore. But if I'm right, then we are not just kids hiding anymore. We are the first kids to be heard. That night, Zora didn't close her room door as usual. She left it slightly open. And for the first time in months, in her dream, she didn't hear the sound of handcuffs locking, but the sound of a woman gently knocking on the door, waiting to be invited in. Late the next afternoon, Jasmine arrived to meet Tamika, without bodyguards, without files. After a short conversation, she asked to meet the other children, and also their leader. Tamika hesitated and said she would go up and talk to them for a while and then come down to answer her. About 10 minutes later, Tamika came down and took Mrs. Crockett up to the third floor. The door to apartment 302F was slightly open. The children were preparing to welcome the first adult after almost a year of being closed off. Pillows and blankets were neatly folded, arranged according to the size of each child. A small white board was stuck to the wall, written in faded blue marker. Survival rules, updated on the 21st. No one sleeps hungry. No hiding illness. No leaving anyone behind. Next to the bookshelf, there was a small photo stuck with double-sided tape that had curled at the corners. In the photo, a boy with crooked teeth was holding up half a loaf of bread and smiling like the sun had never set. Rico, his name was written on the corner of the photo. Jasmine stood in front of the photo for a long time. Tears welled up unexpectedly. She turned her face away, took a deep breath, then turned back and smiled gently at Tamika. In the living room, 7 children sat in 2 neat rows on 2 long chairs. No one smiled. No one talked. Everyone's hands were on their laps, their feet not swinging, as if they were sitting in a clinic or classroom waiting to be called. Zora stood slightly leaning forward. Her face was alert, her eyes watchful but not cold. The girl did not appear impolite. She was simply observing intently, to decide if the adult standing in front of her was real. Mrs. Crockett walked in, gently placing her small bag on the table. She looked at each child, then sat down on the chair opposite, not in a hurry, not raising her voice. Jasmine, thank you for letting me into your home. Not everyone is brave enough to open the door, especially after losing so much. The room was silent, only the sound of the fan gently turning in the corner. Jasmine looked at Zora. You're Zora, aren't you? Tamika told me. You took care of your siblings all winter, teaching, sharing food, keeping everyone together. I didn't come to replace you. I just want to understand how you managed to do all of that. Zora was silent for a few seconds. Her voice was small but clear. Zora, I didn't do it all. It's just, if no one does it, then someone has to do it. Jasmine nodded. I understand. And because I understand, so she came here today, without anyone, without contracts or files. I just want you kids to know one thing. What you are doing is something many adults cannot do. I didn't come to replace. I came to protect. But I can only do that if you allow me to. Zora looked at her for a long time. She didn't argue, but she kept her distance. Her voice rang out again, this time as if asking the whole group. Zora, what will you do if people don't believe us? If they say we're living illegally and then separate each of us? Jasmine said very slowly, I will stand up and say that you are a family, not because of paperwork, but because you chose to stay together. I will say that if a child knows how to take care of their siblings, knows how to write a duty roster, knows how to bury a sibling who isn't in the register, then they deserve to be trusted more than a report. Elijah bowed his head. Josie squeezed Zora's hand. Tamika glanced at her sister, as if holding on to something that was about to slip away. Zora, so, what if you do everything and it doesn't work? Jasmine, then I'll still be here, not to judge, not to separate, But to ensure, if the world doesn't understand you, then at least there is one adult who will take responsibility. Zora bowed her head for a long time. Then she took a breath. Deep, clear. Zora, I don't promise to trust you completely, but we think you're not a bad person. I hope we won't have to become something to be exploited for anyone's benefit, and especially that we won't have to be separated. Jasmine smiled. Not too much. She nodded as if accepting a silent treaty. I don't expect to be trusted immediately. I just want to say that whether it's you or any child of color who is suffering, needs to be heard, needs to be recognized, I, with all my rights and duties, and responsibilities and beliefs, will protect you to the end. That evening, apartment 302F was warmer than usual. Not because of the heat of the conversation, but because in the heart of each of those children, a small fire had been lit, the fire of the desire to live. It seemed like there was about to be a beautiful fairy tale ending, but in real life, there are no fairy tales. On the ground floor of the Bauer building, a decisive knock echoed, repeated 3 times. The man wore a gray jacket, a name tag, and carried a file under his arm. His voice echoed up to the floor. We are from Child Services. We received a report about a group of children without legal guardianship living in this area. The news spread like ink on a white shirt. Kenny, who was cleaning the windows, heard it from below. He rushed up, stumbling on the stairs. Zora! Tamika! They're here! They found the address! We've been reported! The room seemed to explode. Elijah dropped his notebook. Josie hid behind the chair in fear. Nia hugged her pillow, trembling. Zora turned around quickly. Her face was pale, then turned red, as if rubbed with salt. Her eyes pierced Tamika like a broken needle. It was you. You brought her here. I told you, adults, with the label of justice, in the name of righteousness, are just an excuse to tear us apart. They'll take Josie, send Kenny to a detention center, and do a whole bunch of proper procedures without caring how we've kept each other alive. Tamika stood frozen. Her throat was so dry she couldn't make a sound. She shook her head, then quickly spoke, almost pleading. It wasn't her. I don't believe Mrs. Crockett would do that. She promised. She saw Rico. She knows we're family. But Zora didn't listen. Fear had covered her like a black cloud that could no longer be reasoned with. Zora. And she was the first person with enough information to report us. She knows every corner of this house. Tamika burst into tears. Her small shoulders trembled, her eyes blurred with tears. She stepped back, turning her face to the wall, as if wanting to disappear from the world. And so the children were escorted to the homeless children's shelter in panic and fear. At the same time, at the district representative's office, Jasmine Crockett received an urgent message via an internal message. Child Services is on its way to conduct an urgent verification at 302F. The anonymous report has been filtered. Priority level, high. She immediately left the meeting room without saying a word. Less than 30 minutes later, she was at the Bauer building, could no longer maintain her composure. She immediately called the online contact person at the Information Control and Reporting Office. In just 10 minutes, the route tracing system returned the information. It was Elijah's biological older brother, a depraved, addicted, and wandering young man. No one knew that he frequently bothered Elijah to demand money, and that Zona had chased him away and threatened to call the police. It wasn't Crockett. It wasn't the system. It was a blood relative who had left when Elijah was 8. Jasmine didn't wait any longer. She immediately called the senior coordinating director of the Department of Family Services, requesting the immediate suspension of all enforcement activities related to apartment 302F. Her voice at that moment was no longer soft as usual. If you make a mistake tonight, the entire Congress will know. And I will be the one to read the names of everyone who signed the order in the newspaper. No one dared to object. The verification was temporarily halted. The enforcement steps were suspended. The man who filed the complaint was put on a list for mandatory psychological evaluation. And that very night, Jasmine began drafting a bill, temporarily postponing the separation of independent minors from their living community. without a full investigation into their internal relationships and living conditions. The children were returned to the place they clung to. The next morning, apartment 302F was silent. No one touched the morning porridge. No one tidied up the study schedule posted on the wall. Zora sat alone by the window, her head resting on her arm, her eyes swollen. Not from lack of sleep, but because she didn't know what to say after what she had said. Tamika was still in bed, not crying anymore. She just stared blankly at the ceiling, her hand tightly gripping the coin that Mrs. Crockett had left behind. Not because she was angry, but because she had believed and still wanted to believe, but didn't know if that belief was strong enough to stand. Around noon, there was a knock on the door. Gentle. 3 knocks. Not the sound of civil servants. Not the knock of someone in authority. It was Mrs. Crockett. Zora was the one who opened it. She didn't say anything. She just leaned slightly to the side. A small gesture, but the first acknowledgement. Come in. Mrs. Crockett didn't bring anyone with her. Just an envelope of documents and a warm baked good wrapped in tissue paper. She sat down, placed the documents on the table, and then slowly looked at each child. I know yesterday was a bad day, but the only thing worse than fear is misunderstanding someone you once trusted. She pushed the folder toward Zora. In here is the confirmation record. The person who reported it was not you, not anyone in the system, but a relative of Elijah. That person once came to this apartment, demanded money, and was refused by your group, and he retaliated. Elijah bowed his head, not crying, but clearly wondering if blood relation truly meant anything. Zora opened the documents, read them, then folded them back. No one asked her to say anything, but she was the one who spoke. Her voice was hoarse, as if falling from a very high floor. I blamed Tamika wrongly. No one reacted. Tamika remained silent. Zora turned to her sister and continued, slowly but each word falling like a vow. I was too scared, and when people are scared, they will suspect the first kind person who enters their life. Tamika pursed her lips, then gently shook her head. I was scared too, but I know if there's no one to trust, then we'll have nothing left but walls and duty rosters. I'm not angry with you. I'm just happy that we're still here. Zora buried her head in her sister's shoulder. For the first time throughout her journey of managing this house, she didn't cry out of anger or disappointment, but because someone still chose to love her, even when she was wrong. That evening, at the congressional representative's office in Chicago, Jasmine Crockett held a private meeting with 2 human rights lawyers, a sociologist, and a legislative assistant. On the table was the first draft of a law no one had ever written. Temporary bill to protect independent minor communities under special conditions. No separation, no coercion, no criminalization. The assistant asked, "What will this bill be named?" Crockett looked towards the window, where the city lights flickered like unfallen shooting stars. She wrote the name at the top of the draft. 302F. Spring arrived late that year. The flowers did not bloom profusely, only timidly on a few round pots placed in the backyard of the Bauer building. But it was enough for Kenny to joke, maybe the trees are waiting for the law to pass before they dare to bloom. A week after Bill 302F was signed into law, a small room in the community center on the west side of the city was repainted. Pale cream color, old plywood desks were cleaned, and a whiteboard was neatly hung. That room became the first classroom, not at school, but a place where the children themselves taught and learned from each other, under the legal sponsorship of the local representative's office. No bells, no flags hung, just 7 chairs, a bookshelf, and a picture hung in the center of the wall. In the picture, 7 children sat on 2 rows of plastic chairs. Each held a small sign, written with a marker, Elijah, I'm alive. Josie, I'm still here. Kenny, still me. Nia, real. Zora, sister of 6. Tamika, I trust adults. Rico, still remember. Behind them, no one stood. But in the bottom right corner of the picture, behind the blurry glass window, the shadow of a woman appeared, silently, not intruding into the frame, but clearly watching each child. Mrs. Crockett, not wearing a suit, not wearing a badge, just an adult who knew where to stand. Not pushing forward, not standing below, but standing beside, close enough to catch someone if they fall. At the end of the day, while cleaning the classroom, Josie asked Zora, "Sister, if we have to leave this place later, can we take this picture with us?" Zora stroked her head, smiling. "Yes, but I think, if we live well, the picture will follow us, even if we don't carry it." Outside the door, Mrs. Crockett leaned against the railing, looking down at the yard. The afternoon light softened on her hair. Once again, no one needed to say thank you. Just that the children no longer had to live in the shadows. That was enough.